Welcome to the Farm to School podcast, where you will hear stories of how youth thrive and farmers prosper when we learn how to grow, cook, and eat delicious, nutritious local foods in schools across the country and the world.
Hi, everybody. We're your hosts. I'm Rick Sherman.
And I'm Michelle Markestein. And today we have a very, very special guest in studio with us. And that is Bertrand Weber, the Culinary Nutrition Services Director of Minneapolis Public Schools. Hi, Bertrand.
Hello from Minneapolis. So good to be with you guys.
Yay. Thank you for making the time, Bertrand, to share your story. And I guess I just want to jump in. Culinary and Nutrition Services Director. That's a unique title. Tell us about that.
So, we used to be known as Nutrition Services, and we switched it to Culinary and Wellness because A, we provide culinary services. It's all about the food. And two, wellness goes hand in hand with nutrition and culinary. You can't have one without the other, right? You can't eat well if you sit on the couch all day, and you can't exercise if you don't have the proper nutrition or the proper nourishment. So we really focus on both and how one affects the other. And it's just been amazing.
And I can speak to that, Bertrand. I was in Minnesota. I spoke at the Minnesota School Garden Conference years ago.
Yep.
And I was able to come down and talk to you and your protege at the time, Andrea. And I had a school lunch there, and I remember it was locally raised oven-baked chicken, and it was everything on the menu was local, and it was truly, like you said, a culinary. It's not what people have in mind when they think of a typical school lunch. It was wonderful. It was one of the best school lunches I've ever had.
It's funny. I'm a stickler for shifting the paradigm. It's not school lunch.
Yep.
It's lunch at school.
Thank you for that.
Which, people always think about high school lunch. Why is it school lunch? It's just lunch. Happens to be served in a specialty restaurant called a school.
Well, and
so
tell us about more of that, because you are a trained classical chef. So how did that come about, where one day you're doing your chef thing, and then how did you grow into the what was your journey of going into this position?
So I have to share just a little bit of my background. I grew up in Switzerland, and my dad inherited the business from his father, my grandfather, who owned a boucherie charcuterie. And what that is in Europe, it's a butcher shop, but it's also an artisan charcutier maker, meaning my dad made pâtés, sausages, cured meat, dried salamis, the gamut of what now is the charcuterie. Nothing to do with charcuterie board. People don't understand what truly charcuterie is. So I grew up making pâtés and sausages and all that stuff, and develop a passion for the food, and working hand in hand with my dad. I had an aunt and uncle who had a restaurant. So I grew up in the food, and my grandparents, my grandma, brother had a big farm right next to her house. And the farms in Switzerland are not as we think of them in the US, or at least the big commercial farm. They grew everything. They had cows, pigs, chicken, the gamut. And what they grew were every vegetable in the world you can imagine. So I grew up thinking that was the normal, that's how you ate. My grandparents gave us a rabbit. All the grandkids had a rabbit that we raised, and we couldn't wait for Easter to kill the rabbit and have Easter bunny for lunch.
Aww.
And people here think we're nuts.
It was delicious.
But that's delicious. That's the process. So understanding and seeing where your food comes from has always been ingrained in everything that I do. And that's how my kids grew up, with a big garden. And I so remember a friend of Brian coming to me one afternoon that they were spending at our house, and we were picking cucumbers, a small, I think they were white wonders or something. And he says, "Oh, Mr. Weber, that's like nature's candy." And it so resonated with me of when you really show kids and introduce kids to the real food of the vine, the differences it makes. And you don't have to do anything. And when a kid said that's nature's candy, you can't help but smile. So anyway, that's my background that brought me here. I moved to the States with my parents. My dad eventually moved here and opened a restaurant, and I got involved with him in the restaurant again. So always been in that background. I went back to Switzerland and went to École Hôtelière de Genève, 6 months program. And when I came back, I actually was trained chef and other, but I went the route of food and beverage director and working hand in hand with the executive chef. And my route took me all the way from Florida to North Carolina to Cape Cod and eventually to Minneapolis, and always in the hospitality industry. And one year, 1997, my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And that's when it changed my world. I became, I hate to use the word obsessed, but I became so passionate about, what caused him to have diabetes. And of course, no one knows till this day what triggers type 1 diabetes. But the more I looked into our food system, because I spent a lot of time with him in the school, I had the opportunity to take some time off and really manage his diabetes as a kid in elementary school. And I really became the angry parent. I was like, wait a minute, this is not what we should be feeding kids. The thing he was eating is the last thing he needed as a 7-year-old with diabetes. Don't take me wrong, he loved it. He loved the foot-long hot dog and all the stuff that he was having. But that was not the things that I felt we should be feeding kids. And as I had the opportunity to take some time off, I looked into our food system. And that was the beginning of the obesity crisis, cardiovascular diseases in young children, hormone issues with girls, and everything pointed to our food system. Everything was a result of how we shift from eating whole food to processed food, eating food that was cooked by parents and grandparents to food that was manufactured and just reheated in a kitchen. And that's when at some point, my wife and Eric both said, "Dad, you need to either shut up or do something about it." And that's when I went to schools. I said, okay. I'll never forget. Cindy put a newspaper in front of me and said, "Here, there's an ad. They're looking for someone to change their school program, and they don't want someone from schools. They want someone from the outside who's going to come in and not be locked into what school food is," because that's what it was. And that's how I got started. That's 23 years ago or something like that. I forgot now. It's a while back. Yeah, because Eric's now 33. He survived, and I'm now a proud grandparent. He's got a wonderful daughter, and he's doing good. So,
congratulations on that.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. So that's what got me into schools.
Thank you so much for sharing your background, and I see, that passion or obsession you said you started with, more than 2 decades ago is still very strong in you. It's palpable, Bertrand. You are a change maker and do so many different things in foods in schools. And I'm wondering if you could bring to light, share with us a couple of your things you want to celebrate or bright spots you've had over the last 2 decades.
Sure. So I've got to throw this one in because to me, that's just one of the things that just renewed my energy. Before COVID or January 2020, my first granddaughter was born, and then COVID hit. When we emerged from COVID, I had 5 granddaughters.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember COVID as the event that brought me 5 princes. That being said, it renewed my passion because now I'm looking at my granddaughters and I want to make sure that they have an environment that they can enjoy as much as I did when I was young, and that they have food that provides them the same quality of nourishment that I had when I was young. And, you know, I'm getting up there in age, but those girls just renewed my passion for what we do in schools. When I look at the last 22 years, I remember my first exposure to a lunch, and there was literally pizza and French fries. And I asked why. And I was told that French fries was a vegetable. So therefore, we had the grain, the protein, and the vegetable. And I thought to myself, this is not the way we should be teaching kids how to eat. And that's when I started on my journey about, if we're going to serve pizza, there's nothing wrong with it, but let's serve a nice green, you know, that goes along from a culinary perspective, right? And by the way, it has nutrition, it has nutrients, it's got all that we need for the kids.
A couple things went through my mind when you were talking about this. The first is that you've been in Minnesota for 20 some odd years and you've stayed there and you've improved the meal experience so much in Minnesota. But not only that, but as people can find out, and in our show notes, I have links to so many interviews from you and, you know, other podcasts, other magazines, articles. So you're in high demand to share your story so other communities can do that. So my question is, we hear a lot, you said angry parent, and our audience, you know, is for sure, we have food service practitioners, food service directors, school garden coordinators, but we really want this message to go out to those parents. And a lot of those parents that are listening are those same kind of parents. So not everyone can take on and take over a school food service department, but they can still do something to improve. What would you think would be the call to action for those parents that are concerned? What could they do to help?
So over the years, I have calmed down. I'm not angry. I also used to be angry, you know, at every food manufacturers, and I've changed that too. Mm-hmm. As a parent, it's building the partnership and the relationship with the school and the food service director. It has to start with the food service department. You may put pressure from the outside, and I hear stories over and over where parents group have gone to, you know, nonprofit, outside organization, superintendent, school principal to force their agenda, but the food service director is the one who's going to do it. So you have to approach the food service director, and we have to approach them understanding the magnitude of their job and what they have to deal with on a daily basis. And as parents, we should be there to support them. And I realize that sometimes you're gonna have a wall, and sometimes it might be difficult, but it's working. It has to be with the food service director they're the one who are gonna make the change. We have to get people to understand that it has to start with the food service department, has the potential, has the outreach to help. And maybe they cannot have a school garden, but they can be a resource for the school to help them with their garden. But they're the one who are going to be sourcing the food directly with the farmers.
Yeah.
Now, we might not be able to do very, in-depth curriculum changes, but we can provide the resource for teachers, such as here's 5 farmers that we work with that are willing to come to your classroom and talk to kids.
That's a good idea.
We might not be able to do it, but we can be the resource for the schools. So as parents, that's the way we should approach it. Maybe there are parents that are, that are farmers. Maybe they're parents that are physicians that can talk, to kids about the benefits of good quality food. And we always, in our department at least, we don't talk as much as nutrition, and we talk more about good food. Good food is good for you, it's good for the environment, it's good for the community, but it's good food. And by the way, here's all the other benefit. You approach a 10-year-old and say, let me talk to you about why you should eat nutritious food. They'll tune you out. But if you talk to them about good quality food and you make fun and you have a farmer in front of them who can talk about how they raise their turkey, and by the way, we don't use any medicine to raise our turkeys, and turkeys are on the field, they're not in a cage. The kids get fascinated by that. And the next time there is a local turkey burger on the menu, they'll remember the farmer. So as parents, partner with the food service director and offer them maybe your resource that you might have. That, every parent might have a resource or someone they know that could help.
I want to thank you so much for bringing that up. As you probably remember, I was a food service director for 30 years, and food service directors are so busy and they have so many regulations, and sometimes local food or farm to school isn't the first thing on their mind. They're trying to meet their bottom line and stuff. So, and I've always said exactly what you said about it's all about relationships. So if you can have a relationship, take your nutrition services director out for coffee and just say that exact same thing. Like, I'm here to help. Can I help you? What do you need to get local farmers into your, they might not have the time to do that. So that's wonderful message. Yeah. Michelle, you were going to say something?
And I think what's important is, the food service director is not the enemy. He's your partner. And that's how we need to approach them. And parents need to recognize that, because I've seen it where they just attack. Don't attack. Go to the food service director. I know I don't pretend to understand all of your business, but I know the struggle, not the struggle, just your everyday challenges that you have between USDA, financial responsibilities. You're trying to increase your participation, what kids like, what parents like, what the community said, and everybody knows your job, right? You know it because you've been a food service director. But so let them know you're here to help, not to criticize them, even if their program is not the best. I remember when I started in Minneapolis going to PTA meeting and starting with, let me let you know that I hate what we're serving our kids right now. But the reality is, I have a factory, I don't have a kitchen. That's the reality.
Okay.
So tell us something you are excited about serving your kids right now. Thank you so much for laying out how important it is for parents to be partners with culinary and nutrition services at schools. What are some other partnerships that you need to cultivate to make your farm to school program magic happen?
Well, I was on the National Farm to School Advisory Board, and I remember talking with the executive director about, if we call it farm to school, we need to make sure that we have farmers and schools at the table. The best and the most important partnership are the farmers. You can't do farm to school without building that relationship and that trust with the farmer. And I cannot tell you how exciting it is to look at where we are today in Minneapolis, where when Andrea started the first annual farm to school request for proposal in 2013 or so, we were able to partner with 7 farms on a small scale. Most of those farmers that started with us 12 years ago are still with us and have grown substantially because of our commitment to them directly. And we know we now have over 15, I think we're up to 17 this year, forward contracting with local farmers and farm cooperative. So we now forward contract with over 15, 17 farm or farm cooperatives, from 7 to 17, to provide our school district and our students, especially because that's where it's going for, with product that is grown within 250 to 300 miles from our school district. Those are small, emerging immigrant farmers. They're mid-sized farmers. We've now broken our focus on local harvests and regional sourcing. We now are doing grass-fed beef. We have local turkey from Ferndale Market, which I've been working with for 14 years. And he's grown his business substantially because we're a constant, we provide him the outlet for all of his dark meat, where he can sell all of the high cost or high price item to local restaurants and co-ops. We do chicken, we do grains, and it's just embedded in our menu, in our everyday menu. And, just looking back, Farm to School used to be this. It was a freestanding initiative. And I remember Andrea walking into a room with our chef, and the chef would roll his eyes back and go, "Oh, here goes the Farm to School girl," because it wasn't embedded in what we did every day. Where now the first thing our chef says is, "Can we get that locally? Can you find out if there is somebody who could produce that for us?" So it's embedded in everything we do, whether it's a grain, whether it's beef. And again, I don't want to give you the impression that 100% of what we do is local and Farm to School. It's not. We can't. Mm-hmm. We don't have neither the financial resource to do it, nor living in Minnesota can I get fresh bananas in December from my local farmer, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen that way. So there's reality. But when we can, we do. And I think that's the difference. When we can, we do.
That's a perfect message. You do all you can. That's great. I think you're doing enough for sure. But what do you see for the future of Minneapolis Public Schools?
So a huge accomplishment that our district did was the commitment of converting schools from heat and serve to building kitchen. And we're 3/4 of the way there. So I trust and see for the future of all schools within our district being able to have a kitchen to prepare amazing meal for our kids. We continue on the path of scratch cooking. Now, I am blessed with a central kitchen that can do ingredients and components to facilitate schools with some of the meal preparation. We have a 500-gallon sous vide tank where we can cook 1,400 pounds of turkey thigh meat with our own seasoning that will go into the schools and used on a burrito bar, where they take that turkey meat that comes to them in what it's been cooked in the bag that's been cooked in, and use a paddle attachment in a mixer and have the most beautiful shredded turkey thigh meat that's used on a burrito bar or a turkey sandwich. So I think we are continuing to expand what we do with our central kitchen to facilitate the schools. And we're now working on a vegetable processing area, whereas we can do even more with local farmer by bypassing our produce company with things that we can do in-house. So, even expanding, I think, our outreach is what we're looking at. So a lot of the focus in the next couple of years for Minneapolis is expanding the use of the central kitchen to facilitate scratch cooking at site, at schools. So making spice mix, oh my God, we source this local sambusa, which is amazing. Samosa, I'm sorry. We're looking for a sambusa, but now we're doing this samosa. And we do a sauce that's made at the central kitchen that is to die for. That goes. So school get to receive that, but we do it in-house. We do it ourselves because I've got the luxury of the central kitchen. So it's pushing what we can do here at the central kitchen, whether it's a cake mix, a spice mix, something ready that helps the schools roast that vegetable. Right now, they're working on a vegetable blend mix seasoning, which we know we have to reduce the sodium. So how do we tackle that? We tackle that with creating a spice mix. We're using actually a dehydrated lemon with some herbs and things that they're making here that we can send to the schools. So when they get that local green bean or that broccoli, we can roast that using a spice mix that's made here. And then everyone gets the same high quality, and they don't have to, putz around making their own spice mix. So I think it's continuing to focus on increasing what we can do centrally to increase the quality of the food at the site, at the school.
Wow, Bertrand, that is so innovative and exciting. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Well, you are so welcome. This was so much fun. I truly appreciate talking with you guys.
You too. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
The Farm to School podcast was written, directed, and produced by Rick Sherman and Michelle Markiston, with production support from Leanne Locker of Oregon State University. The podcast was made possible by a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture.
The content and ideas of the Farm to School podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Oregon State University, Oregon Department of Education, or the United States Department of Agriculture. The USDA, Oregon Department of Education, and Oregon State University are equal opportunity providers and employers.
Do you want to learn more about Farm to School? Check out other episodes, show notes, contact information, and much more by Googling Farm to School Podcast OSU.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Stop by that website, OSU Farm to School Podcast you mentioned. Say hello and give us an idea for a future podcast.
We'd love to see you. And next time, bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks again, Bertrand.
You are so welcome. This was great.